he will then continue talking about the topic of boredom, incapacity, distraction, procrastination, and the various addictions repaid as escape routes. And he says that one of the things that most provoke boredom, apathy, monotony, and sometimes even deep sadness and depression is that life becomes very repetitive, very monotonous. And the thing that makes life most monotonous is addiction. Addiction provides you with a momentary escape and then leaves you at the same point from where you started. You are not going to see someone who spent hours on the internet and came back as the best writer or the best social advocate or the best whatever it may be. It leaves you at the same point from where you started. When you start looking at the scenery through a car window and find it monotonous, you can be sure the car is parked. And addiction ensures that you stay put. No one grows through addictions. Therefore, you remain stagnant, parked in the same place. And this is terrible for you and for the people around you. You become boring, repetitive, always in the same place. A repetition without progress. This takes an emotional toll that you have no idea. This destroys us from within. It seems like there is something inside us that wants to be born, like a birth. And as it finds no external collaboration, it starts to despair inside and causes great pain, forcing its way out. So, distraction and procrastination seem like the most innocent things in the world. Before you know it, a year has passed, then 2 years, then 10 years. Look here. For a person with an average lifespan of 78 years, which is about the average 1 year, 2 years is not a small thing at all. It is a 178th of what you have as a probability. It is not something to be thrown away. So distraction is procrastination that seems like innocent play. They are like these, and you do not even see it. Time is passing, and you haven't moved from the starting point. Probably the starting point and the end point will be the same. In other words, you will have thrown your life away in the end. And all those agents of resistance will be there laughing at you because you fell into their soap opera. You fell for their trap and threw your life away. There are addicts in love, in sex, in victimization, in destruction, in money, and in problems. Same thing, we have already talked about several of them. An addict, for example, on money is the same thing. Money is not something you exchange for something useful or necessary for you to continue life. No, money has value in itself because it gives me a hierarchical orientation. In other words, I feel better than Silanzo because I have thousands more dollars than he does. In other words, I am not worth anything for who I am. I am worth what is in my pocket. I am worth what I have. If someone comes and steals everything in my pocket, I am nobody. I have not built anything within myself that is truly mine. I built it only things that, over time, I will inevitably lose. So it is also an addiction. I am never at the point of feeling secure, of having an economy that guarantees my future, to be able to start doing something that truly is my life's mission. No, it still is not enough. I need more, I need more. And the possession of money has taken the place of its utility as a medium of exchange. And your life now resides in being the man who has such a bank balance. Being the man who has such a thing. Do you think someone like that makes history? The men who made history were those who gave a lot, not those who possessed a lot. If to have value you must have things, then the value belongs to the things and not to you. And things can easily be taken away. So, the accumulation of money is also an escape route. It is an addiction. In other words, it is yet another tool of resistance, which is very well equipped with tools of all kinds, with weapons of all kinds. Well, he will say that resistance wants to make us superficial and inattentive. And then he asks some really pointed questions. Hey, have you checked your WhatsApp in the last half hour? Do you leave your internet connection on all the time when you are trying to get something done? I like to. Sometimes I am quite an amateur, unfortunately, but I enjoy writing a poem every now and then. It is something that brings me a lot of fulfillment. Do you know what it is like to be in the middle of a poem and hear that ping from WhatsApp? Your inspiration is gone. A bunch of crazy thoughts start swirling in your head as if it was something important. It is absurd. It is absurd. Your house caught fire. Someone is going to send you a WhatsApp message. It makes no sense. In other words, when you do this kind of thing, it's like you're telling WhatsApp, hey, call me to save me. Because I will be in a jam, save me. In other words, you already create things, even if you are not aware of it, that intentionally, to rescue you from continuing to work, to save you, to throw you a lifeline, so you can get out of that tough spot, which is producing what you were born to produce, to fulfill yourself. So, try to answer this little questions with complete honesty. What took in the last half hour? Did I check it? Quite likely, right? Do I sit down to accomplish something? Internet on? Quite likely. You asked to be interrupted, even if you were not aware of it. And this next paragraph he talks about, I considered it the most beautiful in the book. Undoubtedly, I still have to thank Prestridge for this paragraph. Well, there are times when he stops with his practical reasoning. He is hilarious. He is who he is. He has a great sense of humor. He presents things very objectively. He is pragmatic. But there is a moment when he stops everything and becomes a poet. This is the moment I love him the most. He creates beautiful things. And that paragraph was his moment. He says the following: all of us amateurs and professionals are dealing with the same problem. In other words, we all have the same tough nut to crack. The pain of the human being. And why? Where does this human pain come from? What is the pain of the human being? And he says, the pain of the human being is caused by the condition that keeps us suspended between two worlds without being able to enter either one. In other words, you and I aspire to the higher sphere and it calls to us. But sometimes we feel really good down here in the realm of the senses. In other words, if you want to stay only in the realm of the senses, anxiety starts to creep in. It is the child wanting to be born. You cannot standing away from yourself for too long. You cannot stand in the monotony of just surviving. You feel the need to rise, but when you rise too high, you get scared. And what if I never go back down there? And what if the group rejects me? And what if I fall into ostracism, be considered a stranger? No one considers me as part of their group, their circle of friends anymore. In other words, a bunch of fears start to emerge. It's that we start to smile, we begin to self-sabotage. So we are crucified between two worlds, and we cannot even reach that peak our soul cries out for, which we thirst for, almost like a longing. It is very beautiful, and he talks about this in the book. A longing for a place that we have never consciously been to, but that we have probably been to in some way. A certain world where order, beauty, justice, and fraternity reign. You feel that it exists, like a vague memory and an immense desire to return home. When you manage to control the counterweight of vices that pull you down, it is like a balloon that has managed to cut the ties anchoring it to the ground. It tends to rise, but when it rises, you start to fear the altitude, and then you begin to poke the balloon with pins. So it is more or less this drama, this human pain. The pain of the human being, look at that, a phrase worthy of being etched on a closet door. This one is truly worth remembering. The pain of the human being is that we are all angels trapped in vessels of flesh. This vessel of flesh, we sometimes put armor around it to feel more secure. An armor of alienation, of conformity, of not thinking for oneself, of not developing one's own thoughts or feelings. And then there is really no way around it. The angel dies there like that baby wanting to surface. It dies there, curled up, suffocated. In other words, we solve that platonic problem of the imprisoned soul by killing the soul, because then it does not bother us anymore. Our pain comes from being angels trapped in vessels of flesh. How beautiful, Mr. Pressfield. Applause to you for that. What a wonderful image. Continuing the artist always tends to ascend to the higher sphere. Remember that when he talks about the artist, he is referring to the entrepreneur, the one who wants to realize dreams, no matter the field. He tries to ascend to the higher sphere, but not with drugs, rather with work and love. In other words, perseverance, consistency, and putting one's heart into the goal. Courage comes from Kori. Plato says that hero, although this etymology is not accepted today, he mentions in Cratylus, one of his dialogues, that hero comes from eros, love. So imagine a person you love who is on the other side of the river. You don't even swim that well, and you are not eager to face this river, but that person on the other side is in danger and needs you. Look, the possibility of you throwing yourself into this river, coming out on the other side, and losing your fear is immense. How many mothers have done this for their children? To throw themselves into high-risk situations. Why? Their heart is on the other side. She cannot abandon her heart. She won't live like that. There is even an Eastern saying that the first thing we should do when we awaken in the world, when our consciousness awakens, is to place our heart at the feet of the Lord of the world. And then the rest of the body has to catch up to recover its heart. That is courage, chasing after your heart. That is heroism. So he says that all alienation, all escape is replaced in the life of the professional by the work they love, not just the end result, but they love the data. They have their work and the love. The deep love for the possibility that this work gives you to have a life filled with meaning, a truly human life. Therefore, every day I don't get bored or tired of my work. Every day I thank him for the opportunity he is giving me to contribute to the world, to not live in vain. And that is the professional. And if the next day he dies, without having reached the conclusion of his dream, he still dies peacefully, at peace with heaven and earth, because as long as he was allowed to walk, he walked in a way that was true to himself. He delivered his message to the best of his abilities. There is a poem, which I do not have it memorized, but I find very beautiful, that talks about a man who wanted to climb a mountain. That mountain was very tall, snowy, icy, and he did not have many resources for it. There wasn't all the climbing technology that exists today, but he didn't give up. He climbed, yet he could not reach the peak. Until one day he was trying to climb, a snowstorm hit. He got stuck there and died. When they found his body, he had left a note written in very scribbled handwriting, saying, "My body stays here, but my soul continues to seek the summit of this mountain." I find this story very beautiful because it is something like that. Our will, when well aligned at the apex of this pyramid, will, values, virtues, wisdom, nothing, not even death, according to some traditions, can stop us. Sometimes it even propels us with more strength, so we can keep moving forward. So, this artist, this professional, is highly motivated by their work. He finds there his path of least resistance to achieve self-realization as a human being. Every day, and not just for a goal that is way off in the future. The professional is not like the amateur, lost in the future, fantasizing, or stuck in the past, feeling nostalgic for a past that never existed, one he made up. The professional is in the present. Oh, I miss those times that were so good. If we turned this person into a time machine, they would see that those times were just as hellish as the present, loaded with problems just the same. That idyllic past was invented. That idyllic future will not be reached. You cannot achieve great things in the future with a present that is absent, empty, and devoid of quality. The professional is in the present, body, mind, and soul together in the present. The amateur is always in the past or the future. It is also an escape tool. He is going to talk about the higher sphere. Plato used to say that the higher sphere, which he called the realm of ideas, is one of perfect love, truth, justice, and beauty. So, the artist who seeks this tries to invoke the magic of their goal, to act now in this moment. So it is like you would have an ideal up there and the shadow of that ideal down here. We have the human ideal and the shadow of that ideal, which is us. What is evolution? Strive to ensure that while improving ourselves and that our reflection in the world, which is our personality, increasingly becomes the image and likeness of that ideal that created us. Because we start receiving reflections from various other things, we begin to deform. Sometimes it becomes more animalistic than human. Plato talks a lot about this in the myth of Glaucus, the sea Glaucus. I won't go into it here, so as not to stray too far from the topic. But the fact is that man, having fallen into the waters of matter, begins to take on other models and starts to deform, and loses this human reference point. The evolution of man is to strive increasingly, through his work and effort, to correspond to this human ideal. Ultimately, what we came here to do is to build ourselves. And through our example, help to build others as human beings. Nature does not need us for anything else. Flying machines, it has comets, planets, stars, all flying in every direction. It has already done that. At incredibly high speeds, it has already achieved the speed of light. It does not need us for that. It needs us to build ourselves, because there is a law of free will which does not allow it to do it for us. This is what it needs from us. It is the only necessity it has. If you want to offer something to God, to nature, to whoever it may be, offer your growth. Because it is the only thing it cannot achieve on its own. The rest has no necessity. So, why is the artist inspired? Because as he looks towards this ideal, in the realm of ideas, the magic of this ideal comes to him. In other words, he receives a bit. Being in this world, he receives a bit of something that is not from this world. He receives inspiration from a realm where things are perfect, and begins to shape this inspiration into matter, in a way that those who see nothing of perfection with their own eyes see it through the eyes of this creator, this entrepreneur, this artist. It was a bridge between heaven and earth. Every creator, every true achiever is a bridge through which the perfect ideas of heaven reach earth. He is like a bamboo pipe, as Taoism says, where the breath of the spirit enters and only the breath of the spirit comes out. If you are full of dust, the breath of the spirit enters and dust comes out. So, this shaping in the concrete plane of the perfect ideas from the realm of ideas, this is always the inspiration, and it is where the quality of the artist, the true creator, comes from. Imagine the following. I have given this example many times. Maybe some of you already know it. Imagine that you don't like the sun and you live in a house where you close all the doors and the windows, even the cracks, to keep the sun out because you do not like it. At a certain point, you realize that this is madness. You have an epiphany, realizing that this is nonsense. And you decide to make peace with the sun. What do? You unlock doors and windows and open everything, and let the sunlight in. Look, the distance you had from the sun when the window was closed was X. What is the distance you have from the sun with the window open? X again. The same thing. But just by deciding to put yourself in contact with the sun, it already illuminates you where you are. And so it is with the artist, the entrepreneur, the person who builds themselves. Just the fact of putting himself in contact with the human ideal and its attributes, justice, kindness, beauty, harmony. These things already transform him where he is. By this willingness to be in contact. Of course, as he progresses, he will get closer and have more influence. But just this decision already causes human ideals to project onto the professional, and they become inspired. Right. This pursuit brings the professional peace of mind, which is what we call human happiness. It is the sleep of the just. It is the feeling of a job well done. It is that satisfaction of looking at ourselves in the mirror and saying, man, today's battle is tough, but I held my ground, I overcame, I conquered. Now, whichever the problem that whoever brings me, now I have enough, I can help more than I used to. I face this cane. Therefore, whoever wants to listen, I can offer a precious gift. It will not hurt anyone else like it hurt me. I will leave this contribution, this legacy for humanity. This really reminds me of Joseph Campbell's monomyth. And soon he will talk about this. the amateur and their fears. We have already mentioned that the amateur is afraid of everything, of success, of failure, of loneliness, afraid of looking foolish, fear of not achieving what he wants, fear of poverty. But his greatest fear is being excluded from the tribe. In other words, suddenly having no tribe that accepts him, and he becomes an outcast. Oh, I will lose my friends, my family. No, you will not lose them. Those people who used to count on you for happy hour, they won't invite you anymore to happy hour, to talk nonsense, to drink more than they should. But when these people have a serious problem and need someone to say something that makes a difference, they won't remember the happy hour friends. They will remember you. Choose what you want to be remembered for. Be careful with emotional neediness. Be careful with the desire to be loved at any cost. And I will also meet a bunch of other people who had the same courage. To take your muse as your guiding star and continue walking in her footsteps. In other words, you will not be excluded from the tribe. You will be excluded from certain activities of the tribe, and it would be a mutilation to keep them, because they are like a ball and chain tied to your ankle. There is no point in staying behind anymore, but you will become a person with a different role in the menu of people's options, and you will also find other people who increasingly understand your journey. Then other friends will come, other contexts, other landscapes, and you will be increasingly equipped to help when human beings truly need something. The great human beings do not find solace in the buddy from happy hour. They find solace in the one who has suffered, fought the battle to become a more complete human being, closer to wisdom, closer to peace of mind and human fulfillment. In other words, the professional. And when we face the heaviest burdens in the world, let's pray and hope that there are professionals who can help us. Although at the time they were being formed, we often served as stumbling blocks. But we desperately need them. That is how it is. The professional, this is an important point he emphasizes, does not stop being afraid. Simply, he reacts differently in the face of fear. He knows that where there is fear, there is something new. And to grow is to walk towards the new. Therefore, fear does not need to be a stop sign, but rather a sign to proceed with caution, proceed with awareness. And he will move forward with awareness, but he will not be held back. Because if he stops in the face of fear, every time something new appears in his life, he will hold back. This is a sign that he will never experience any renewal. Will die the same size that was born. Will die without ever moving forward. No real time. Those who attend my lectures might know I talk a lot about this concept of real time. They say that in the Greek world, there was a hierarchy of gods who were the supreme deities ruling over the divine realm. So, the first time there's Uranus, which is a world of potentials. Then there is chaos. After that comes Kronos, time. After that comes Zeus, who is the lord of Olympus. Olympus etymologically is limbo vonis, that which emerged from the limbo. It is the highest point of our consciousness, which we are all striving to reach. It is the pinnacle of the pyramid. When I ask my students, where are we? Are we in chaos, Uranus, Kronos, or Zeus? So most of them say, we are in Kronos, we are in town. Let me tell you, if you do not already know. Very few of us, very few human beings have truly stepped into Kronos. Most are still in the primordial chaos, or in Uranus, which is just potentiality, stardust, but nothing accomplished. Imagine you meet someone on the street today, someone who is incredibly selfish and greedy. Then you go 20 years without seeing this person, and you meet them again. Probably have put on some weight loss in here. But how are they? Still incredibly selfish and greedy. There is no time for this person. No real time has passed. Only clock time has passed, because real time is measured by advances towards the human ideal. And she has not moved an inch towards the human ideal. So the professional is the one who is in Kronos. with eyes fixed on Olympus, but in Kronos and cherishing every step of the journey, cherishing each day that Kronos offers them. Not anxious for Olympus, but using it as a directional reference, while enjoying each step and the fulfillment that each day in real time can bring you. So he goes on to say, continuing, that the amateur is indeed a narcissist, and unfortunately, this is very true. For those who have read The War of Art about overcoming your internal limits at the beginning, you remember there is a hierarchical orientation. What is hierarchical orientation? The person is constantly looking outward. What do others want me to do? To do what they want and be successful. I have no calling. I want to be successful, make money, and stand out. And fame and fortune. I look at what people want, and I also look up and down. Downward to see who's right behind me and be careful not to let them trip me over. Upward to see who is immediately above me and figure out how I can trip them up. Constantly competing and wanting to give only what people like, not what they need. This is hierarchical orientation. He already mentioned in the first part that the muses hate hierarchical orientation. And an amateur is like that, a narcissist. He becomes vain when his luck increases and devastated when his luck decreases. He doesn't find fulfillment in the work itself, but in the recognition. He needs adulation, fame, recognition. He is not motivated by doing what he does. If you were to look at statistics, I have read a statistic about this. Around 70 to 80% of the great men in history, in all fields, were not recognized by their contemporaries. And yet, they did not stop doing what they had to do. Imagine yourself, for example, as a Mozart. Salieri was worth 1,000 times more than him. And he didn't stop composing because of that. He did not stop creating his work as long as his short life allowed him. Imagine Mozart in the middle of the Lacrimosa, that divine piece, the Lacrimosa from his Requiem. He stops halfway and says, "Wow, this is so boring. When is it going to end? If it would have been grand in that way, or will people like this? It would have been vulgar." As they say, Salieri's creations were those of a court musician. The trivialization of life. It is what the Greeks used to say, that the great art of man is to steal moments from the mundane for the sacred. Steal moments from Kronos for Zeus. So the men who did noteworthy things, they did not have hierarchical guidance. The professional does not have hierarchical guidance. He finds fulfillment in what he does today in the now. It is what Pressfield calls territorial orientation. He feeds off his own work, as if it were a bank where you have deposited a sum of energy and motivation. It gives back to you whenever you need it. The amateur is hierarchical. It is superficial, narcissistic, and competitive. One of the things that characterize closely related to what we've already discussed, the amateur, is that they need to be valued by others. Therefore, what he will do is what's trendy, what pleases others. It is not what people need, it is what people want. Plato has a very interesting passage in his Republic. He says he is a demagogue, a bad politician. It is like someone who works in a zoo and keeps watching a little monkey that is caged. He sees that the monkey likes to eat in one corner of the cage and likes to sleep in another. And it likes to eat certain things more than others. He observes the monkey's habits, even if it is not very good for him, that it is what he likes. And then he builds a platform that says, if elected, everyone will sleep in his corner and eat in his corner. In other words, he offers what others want, not what they need. Imagine a pediatrician like that. The child comes in with a severe throat infection that could spread. It has to be an injectable and fast-acting medication. No, the child not like me. I need her to like me, so I will give her strawberry syrup. It harms the child, doesn't it? Would you consider that a pediatrician? No, that is a manipulator, a demagogue. that we do not transplant these good symbolic examples to other areas of life. So, no one who is a creator, no one who fulfills their nature, no one who contributes something valuable to the world is a servant to people's opinions. He wouldn't do anything that would last for a long time, not even his life as a whole. Usually, if he lives long enough, he witnesses the downfall of his own ideas and creations. Does not add value to the world. It reiterates and feeds the world's vices. For that, there is no need. There's already too much of it. It is actually a very competitive market. And he fears, as we have already mentioned, abandoning and disappointing the tribe's expectations. Because in our historical moment, it is imperative that you belong to a tribe. Even if you have to leave your identity, your vocation, your inner name hanging at the door. To be able to wear the tribe's uniform. The tribe does not allow you to think for yourself, act for yourself now. Everything is standardized, thought out, and felt. I confess to you that I have seen and heard it a few times, and it is something that gave me deep sadness to see certain young people saying they don't like to think. They are too lazy to think. They just want to enjoy life. It is a stupidity of such magnitude. I cannot imagine how someone made a human being reach this point. How he did that to himself, even. We distinguished ourselves from Neanderthals. We began to evolve. Why? Sapiens. The characteristic of sapiens have more to do with wisdom than nearly a reason that creates things and more things, sometimes not so necessary. Is it possible that we rushed and we were not sapiens yet? Who are we then after all? Instead of being at the wheel, driving our vehicle in the direction we choose, we're in the back seat, blindfolded, being driven. We don't know by whom or where to, and we only demand that the back seat be comfortable, and that the menu served is tasty, and nothing more. We traded living for cheap flattery, for cheap pleasures. We stopped living and are merely surviving. So the fear of disappointing the tribe's expectations, which demands your identity as a price, is a hindering fear to achieving some level of personal identity, personal ideas, and personal creations. If everyone in humanity had this fear, we would still be in the Stone Age. Not even technological inventions would have been made because a person who sets out to invent something is breaking the tribe's inertia. In other words, if this fear had prevailed in the history of humanity, we would be lost because there would be no evolution in any field. Fortunately, there were some brave souls along the way. And if we are not one of those brave souls, our life will be thrown into the common pit of those defeated by resistance. Unfortunately, because it makes no difference, neither to the world nor to themselves. The amateur fears solitude and silence because, as I mentioned to you, solitude and silence force him to confront himself, and he has a terrible fear of that. I mentioned in my talk about solitude that there are people you can tell perfectly when they are alone at home. They turn on the TV and the sound system at full volume and still go to the phone. They need stimuli to pull them out. They fear the encounter with themselves. And that's a terrible thing. There are more lonely people in the great New York than in a small town of 10,000 inhabitants, because solitude is not about being without others. It is about being without oneself. And we cannot bear our own company, because we will have to confront the failure in everything we thought we were, dreamed of being, and what we leave behind. So, the amateur constantly escapes from his inner life. He constantly seeks distractions and values superficiality, knows Twitter culture, the culture of any other social network, knows to talk about 1,000 facts that add absolutely nothing to anything. I recommend to you all, we often forget in our days, one of Brazil's great treasures, which is Machado de Assis. Read The Theory of the Medallion. Read it, it is available as public domain. Read The Theory of the Medallion. It is a father instructing a son on how to speak, to have a certain presence in social circles, that to say absolutely nothing, to have no conviction, no depth whatsoever. If he has any conviction, any depth, He will be expelled from the tribe and won't be able to become the medallion. I feel like translating this and sending it to Pressfield. Machauner de Assis is magnificent, and this story of his perfectly mirrors that. There is also another one that talks about the ensign. It is also very worthwhile. It talks about things very similar to this. So he will say that places where superficiality reigns are the amateur's paradise. He will always be there, chatting, always on the surface, never inside. Another great characteristic of the amateur, immediate gratification. Everything has to be exactly now. He is incapable of delaying his gratification. He wants quick things. Fast food. Intellectual fast food. Fast food of pleasures. Everything has to be very fast. He is incapable of working with perseverance and consistency to build greater things. He lacks patience. He is anxious. Imagine putting an amateur in charge of building the pyramids of Egypt. Several generations that passed through there knew they would not see that work completed. They would build to leave as a testament for the future, so that the man of the future could witness the grandeur of their ancestors' dreams. They knew they would not see it finished. And they worked with the same dedication, with the same commitment. Far from being an amateur, he is even incapable of planting a plant that takes a long time to grow. The fruits have to be mine. In other words, impulsive and extremely selfish, incapable of delayed gratification. Be condemned to only do small, mediocre things. The amateur, the addict, and the obsessive want everything now. Now, what happens is that when they get what they wanted, they fall into a terrible apathy because they realize that it did not change their life at all. It is like a little dog chasing after a tire. Have you ever seen this? They run in the end, like madmen, after the car tire, the motorcycle, and suddenly the car and the motorcycle stop. They just stand there with that silly face, not knowing what to do with the tire. The joy was in the chase. When you finally reach it, it holds no value. Who explored this very well recently was that Disney movie, the newest one, Soul, an animated film by Disney. The young man got everything he wanted, and there was that emptiness. And he realized that a frantic race towards a goal, no goal is so great that it justifies all that empty and anxious time of life. The value of life lies in each day, with body, mind, and soul together. So the amateur wants everything now and is usually indifferent or insensitive to others. As I mentioned to you earlier, he is so afraid that his fear overshadows his compassion for others, according to Pressfield. In other words, he is so paralyzed by fear that he is unable to perceive the pain of others, because that might create risk, might create commitment. So he is insensitive, alienated, and selfish. And another thing, since he has no compassion for himself, he is throwing his life away, condemning himself to the worst suffering, which is the suffering of my dream of not letting its birth happen. If he has no compassion for himself, he won't have compassion for anyone else. And life is always about parallels. What you don't achieve in relation to yourself, you won't have in relation to others. What kind of compassion I will practice with others? Hypocrisy, a mask. If I do not have compassion for myself, for my own pains, and for what I am doing with my life, I would be indifferent to the pain of others. The amateur usually, sometimes not always, but sometimes he even realizes that he is drifting away from his higher nature. When he starts to feel compassion for himself, he begins to have hope for transformation. He starts to have some possibility of transitioning from an amateur to a professional. When he starts to feel sorry for his dreams, sorry for his deeper nature that is being stifled, he begins to feel sorry for the world that he paid for, the nature that invested heavily to keep him alive for decades. Because a human being's life costs nature a lot in resources. He gave nothing back. He was ungrateful. He did not help nature at all. And at certain moments, he even got in the way. When he starts to feel this deep compassion, it means pregnancy. Do you know the story? Socrates used to say that his mother, Phaenarete, was a midwife. She was an excellent midwife. There was only one thing that she would never be able to do. It is to deliver a woman who is not pregnant. The amateur, when he starts to become pregnant with compassion, begins to nurture the professional. He suffers, pulls his hair out, but it is a good process. It is a cocoon process for the caterpillar. It is necessary indeed. He began to nurture the professional within himself. Who does not keep lamenting over the pains he caused or causes? He starts working to mitigate them. Now, at this moment, and he loves the work he does, with the best privilege he can have. I remember some time ago, in one of my lectures, which is the work by Khalil Gibran, which is a wonderful poem, someone in the comments said that I was encouraging people to be exploited because work is exploitation. Automatically, I thought, an amateur's thought. Work is a burden. The real pleasure is just the satisfaction. If you could not do anything, much better. An amateur's thought. You're throwing your life away. The amateur is very dependent. He is very afraid to act on his own, lacking self-confidence. He does not trust that he can be a transformative agent. And sometimes society really feeds into this. You come with your own ideas. Who are you to have your own ideas? Did you study for this? Who are you? Are you a philosopher? Did you study for this? What is your background? As if the right to have ideas was not inherent to all of humanity. They will come and ask for Adam's will, saying it only allows those who have studied a certain discipline to think. That doesn't exist. Every human being has the right to think, the ability to think, and the duty to think. To have your own ideas, to build oneself. But as they started to instill, they managed to instill this thought in the amateur's mind. He lacks self-confidence. And without self-confidence, he lacks his foundation to propel himself into the future. He tries to preserve and the ground sinks. Therefore, he does not take flight, like the story of the little bird. There is a way to trap a little bird and prevent it from having the strength to preserve with its tiny feet and take flight. So, the amateur, due to this lack of self-confidence, everything he does, he feels he needs someone else's permission. This does not mean, as Pressfield highlights, and I think it is important, that you should not learn from others, be inspired by others, or take good examples from those who have done great things. But if you, in order to fulfill your vocation as a human being, have to go to someone for authorization, it means you are not realizing yourself. You are trying to realize someone else, because the other person will look and say this dream has nothing to do with me. He will condemn, unless he is someone endowed with a certain wisdom, he will condemn that part of your dream that doesn't align with his own dream. Even though the ultimate dream is the same for all of humanity. So, when he is unable to draw inspiration from great men, yet have his own ideas and carve his own path, trust in himself and assure himself, he will never achieve anything significant. There will come a certain moment when you won't be able to listen to anyone, you're alone, just do it yourself. And the opportunity to run, to help, to do, to spare someone from something, the moments of opportunity in life are very fleeting. In fact, in Greek mythology, it was said that opportunity is kairos, the little bald boy with just a tuft of hair in the front, right? If you do want to catch it from the front, you won't catch it from behind, it is gone. So we will miss opportunities because we couldn't consult the experts, isn't that right? Because the amateur does not trust himself, he does not have confidence in himself, nor does he believe that he is capable of having his own ideas worthy of consideration. He does not have a set of values that allows him to judge his own thoughts. I am a human being whose life goal is to become a more complete human being, a true human being, meaning that from now until the end of this life, I will be more fraternal than I am today. Then I realize that if this is my idea, it takes me there, because I can also have crazy and misguided ideas. If this is my idea, it takes me there. Okay. If it distances me from my humanist ideal, then no, that is a fantasy, it is madness. You yourself have to develop this discernment. You can't wait forever for someone to tell you which direction to take. Sometimes you will be alone with yourself. Even Pressfield talks about this. That is why it is good to fall into a hole every now and then for life to knock you into a pit. Because down in the pit, you'll be alone and you'll have to make decisions on your own. Because otherwise, you won't rise. And then you won't be able to toss the question up there, should I climb up or not? There is no other way. You will have to try to use the best of your potential to grow and rise. He says something very interesting, which is one of the things that upsets him the most. In the United States of America, in the public measures that are taken, in all the decisions that are made, it is as if they arrive, because it is a factory for creating amateurs. It is as if they come to people and say, I will give you what you want in exchange for nothing. In other words, it doesn't encourage initiative, responsibility, participation, or merit now. Just stay quiet, follow your basic script, and we'll give you everything you want without you needing to do anything. And people believe it and may get caught up in the savior complex. A problem arises and everyone stays quiet. They don't seek opportunities to do their best, still within a very small boundary. There are all possibilities that exist. Because the world is always a small boundary. Life is a small boundary. We have to try, within this small stage, to give our best. But no, they tell me that I just have to stay quiet because the great savior leader, or the great savior leaders, will solve everything for me. Stay quiet and I will give you everything you want. He says that this type of policy goes against the culture. It does not cultivate the seeds of humanity. It does not allow a person to develop. It is demagoguery. It is an exploitation of others' weakness, and it does not let anyone grow. Moving on. The unmistakable sign of an amateur for Pressfield is that everything will only start tomorrow. This is what we call procrastination. Procrastination, as we have already mentioned, is treacherous. Instead of saying, I will never do it, I say, I will do it on Monday. Let Monday never comes. It was not this week. It was the next and the next and the next. In other words, I will do it tomorrow is the amateur's specialty. The professional's approach is, I am doing it now at this moment. I will commit, I am already committed. I will walk, I am already walking. He likes the present. The professional loves the present, while the amateur is a procrastinator and uses this procrastination as an excuse to never do anything. And that Monday, the so-called idyllic Monday, never arrives. Pressfield says, we have already discussed even on another occasion. He reiterates himself on the same subject here. Sometimes exile, failure, banishment. It can be a good thing, because when you hit rock bottom, you have to decide for yourself. So the worst moments of your life may have been caused by this need of your soul, this thirst of your soul, which wanted you to start taking life seriously. It was my enemies who drew me into the pit. No, it was your soul. She was fed up with you staying stuck in the same place, killing yourself without any sense, without any purpose. She threw you into the hole. When you reach the top, when you climb out of that hole through your own effort, believing in yourself and having a worthy human goal, when you become a professional, you realize it was the best thing she could have done for you, like the little cow on the edge of the abyss, on the precipice. He insists on the issue of career, and he's right. He says, sometimes you choose a career because it is a metaphor for your fulfillment. So you think that one thing will replace another. He even talks about himself. His dream of being a writer has been there forever. He considered the writer to be a strong, adventurous person, capable of exploring an entirely unknown world. But he was terrified of being a writer. His machine tucked away at the bottom of the truck bed with a bunch of junk piled on top was terrified. And what did he go do? He became a truck driver. Do you know why? Being a truck driver is something virile, pioneering, facing unknown roads, facing unknown cities. And at a certain point, he realized that it was a cheap metaphor. It was a cheap imitation, a vulgar replica of his true dream. and that it was not going to fulfill him. And he thought life was an adventure. And every time he set off for a new place, he wanted to reach somewhere. He was not going anywhere. He was going around in circles. It was an unfinished metaphor. Of the explorer, he wanted to be in front of his typewriter. He says, look at your profession. Look at the career you chose. Take a look and see if it is not a metaphor for something. Then you might find a symbol of what would truly fulfill you. What would truly fulfill you? Going to work was a celebration. He tells a story that I found very interesting about a man who was a racehorse breeder. And he went to see the revolutionary method. His horses were all champions, and he said, look, most people put a whip in the jockey's hand and tell them to whip the horse to make it run. I do not do that at all. I took these young horses and I get them to enjoy running freely, to be encouraged to run, to make it an adventure, to be rewarded for running, to love running. There comes a certain time when they want to run, and I hold them back. No, not anymore today. Only tomorrow. I want tomorrow, when I release them, for them to love running and take off in a wild dash, because running is the most fun and delightful thing they know in life. I'm never welcome to run to the point of exhaustion and associate running with exhaustion, with pain, a whip on a shoulder, or things like that. They would never be good. I want them to enjoy the race in such a way that I have to stop, that they wanted more. See how incredible it is? He said they were champion horses and no one knew his method. This is what I call intrinsic interest. Sometimes kids studying for college entrance exams or for a job, hating studying, thinking it is a drag, torturing themselves for 10 hours a day over it. I say, look, if you learn to love knowledge by studying 5 times less, you will achieve better results. Intrinsic interest in the present, in what is beneath your feet, in what is in your hand, in the present life, in the present moment. Mind, heart, and soul together here. Mind, body, and soul together here. Those who have this work wonders. And you have to find your own way of doing this. Because when you take a stand, what I accomplish is closely tied to what I want to achieve. This extends to your entire life. This is a philosophy of life. What do I want for my family? I hope the kids grow up soon because there's so much work. No. I want a day with my children. Oh, I hope so and so, my spouse, loses that habit because it irritates me so much. No, let me learn from that habit of his. Because if I learn from that habit of his, suddenly I might be able to help him out of it. Today holds a unique and unrepeatable mystery that no other day will bring back. And that is a big secret. There is a beautiful poem called Ithaca by a Greek poet named Konstantinos Kavafis. Look up this poem on the internet. What Kavafis will say, he was a poet from the last century, is that when you head towards Ithaca, do not rush at any moment. When you stop at the finition point, visit all the stalls, see the beautiful gates. When you stop in Egypt, seek out all the wise people to learn what they have to teach. In other words, may you arrive at Ithaca old and rich, enriched by everything the journey has given you. Do not demand riches from Ithaca, because it never promised you that. It promised you a beautiful journey. Do you understand this? I will reach a certain point. No, the point you will reach is the one where you already are. Imagine that the line of life is an infinite line where every point holds the same value. There is no point of arrival. Life comes from way back infinitely and continues beyond the human condition infinitely. All points are equally important. Therefore, body, mind, and soul together in the present moment. And you achieve this with the greatest ease when you find that message you wanted to share with the world. And spread this to every moment of your life, and learn to live like this in every moment of your life. Keep looking for clues. Always strive to be present in whatever you do, no matter what it is. But gradually realizing where your presence would generate the most value. And you can use metaphors like, for example, the false career you created. Well, professionalism changes a person's entire life. Remember that he said it is not an easy process. It is not about buying a little course, nor is it about buying a trinket, nothing like that. It is simply about wanting it. That maintaining that desire, it is perseverance and consistency. That is the tricky part of the story. And it will completely change your life. He will say, look, change the time you wake up and go to sleep. Change what you do and what you don't do. Change the activities you engage in and your attitude towards them. Change what you have, what you eat, and the shape of your body. Change everything, because everything will be aligned within a purpose. I have a message to give to the world. Therefore, I need to have the necessary energy to get there. Discipline to form. Your entire life revolves around this life goal of yours. Therefore, your entire life must be aligned within a certain system of discipline that supports the fulfillment of your mission. Ah, that is terrible. No, that's not terrible. You learn to like it. According to Plato, character formation is about taking our impulses to like certain things and reject others. It is about learning to like what makes us grow and reject what dehumanizes us. Character formation is nothing more than the refinement of taste in such a way that I move towards what makes me grow because I want to and because I like it. In other words, being a professional requires a progressive refinement of character. Remember that your body, with its instincts and appetites, if it governs itself, will be much less healthy and much less resilient than if your body is guided by an awakened consciousness with a certain degree of wisdom. It doesn't sacrifice, it nourishes it in the best way, it gives it the necessary rest. An awakened human consciousness takes much better care of the body than the winds of the body. Have no doubt about it, don't fall for that. So, all of life begins to follow the rhythm of the law of necessity. Those things that seemed impossible in themselves. I will have to go on a diet. It starts on Monday. I have to stop eating this or that. What a burden! No, it is no longer a burden. Look at what I will accomplish if I have the physical vitality for it. And all these needs are drawn in by the magnetism of this professional dream. There is a quote by Saint-Exupéry, the author of The Little Prince, that goes something like this. If you want to build a ship, do not start by gathering wood, cutting boards, or assigning tasks. Start by evoking in men and women a love for the vast and deep sea. In other words, before you start cutting boards, bringing wood, and distributing tasks, begin by evoking in men and women the love, the yearning, to form profound examples. You aspire to the ends, you aspire to the means, and make every moment glorious. Make each achievement glorious. So, the sum of all these things is necessary to result in a professional. He notices the professional, which is another interesting thing he discusses a lot in the first book. He realizes that when he starts being true to his purposes, organizing his life, loving order, and understanding that in order you find freedom, you find beauty. He starts to notice a strange reaction from the people around him, his friends, his relatives. Because anyone who is being defeated by resistance, when they see someone who is being victorious, it is not consciously or out of malice. They feel uncomfortable. Because it proves that they could also react, but they don't do it. Pressfield himself mentions in The War of Art and says, there is a tacit agreement to keep us all wallowing in the mud together. When someone reacts, they are seen as a traitor. So you realize that these people feel uncomfortable because they are being sabotaged by their fears while you're facing yours and winning. Do not let yourself be intimidated by this, as we have mentioned before. You do not abandon these people. You offer a friendly shoulder if they decide to grow. And you will also find new friends who are in the same battle as you, fighting and growing. There is a saying I always use always, and to me, it is super interesting. Anyone you want to help, you have to approach them and say, to rise, count on me. To fall, fall alone. Do not think it a solidarity, fraternity, or love to support a person's vices, to support the foolish things they do. You are simply clinging to them as they fall, wasting your life in vain and making the fall even faster because it became heavier. To rise, count on me. If you want to fall, fall alone. You should always ensure this for the people you love. And you should strive to love as many people as possible, of course, because that is what it is all about. We are in search of unity. One day we must realize that all of humanity is our family, and we must realize that there is an empty space in our hearts that we have yet to fill. But by definition, it includes all of humanity and all of nature within it. Becoming a professional, then, is difficult. And he reiterates what has already been said. None of us would have done it if we had not been forced to. Therefore, there was an invisible hand that came to our little cow and pushed it off the cliff. It is probably the hand of our own essence, our own divine self, which desperately needs you to undergo this second birth, this second care. This week, I was recording my participation, my commented reading of the Corpus Hermeticum. And in chapter 13, the Corpus Hermeticum, one of the most traditional books of humanity, speaks of this second birth as a glorious moment in life. When you are born into Nous, when you are born into your divine essence, or at least begin to walk towards it. The professional is not someone who is born on the plane of essence, but someone who is strongly committed to that plane, like a castaway adrift in the open sea. He is a plaything in the hands of the tides. But if there is an island far away, and on that island a rope is tied, and the end of that rope is floating near you, if you grab that end of the rope and don't let go, and proceed with rhythm, responsibility, without haste and without pause, pulling yourself along, you are no longer a plaything in the hands of the tides. You are not on solid ground. You are deeply committed to the path that leads you to solid ground. That is the professional, whereas the amateur is a plaything in the hands of the current. I say the same thing in relation to the philosopher. The wise person is on solid ground. The philosopher is tied to this rope. He pulls himself along with rhythm because rhythm ensures life. With rhythm, he pulls himself along, and one day he will reach the solid ground that is wisdom. Your body lives thanks to the rhythm of the heart, the rhythm of the lungs, the peristaltic rhythm of the intestines, and so on. The entire body, the entire life is driven by rhythm. The professional is the one who assimilates this rhythm of the body into the soul. And it has life. It gives life on this plane as well. Because where there is rhythm, where there is order, the promotion of life begins.